What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another dope edition of Define Your Legacy. I'm your host, this Elijah McBee. And before we tap into today's episode, just want to shout out the online store of Define Your Legacy, which can be found at the link in the description of this episode. All right, we have t-shirts, long sleeves, hoodies, masks, and a whole lot more. All right, so feel free to check out the online store of Define Your Legacy, which can be found at the link in the description of this episode. All right, and just like that, we're going to jump right in to today's episode. We have Taryn on the show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you for asking. So if you could, right, just introduce yourself and tell the world what it is that you do and the value that you provide.
Jeez, that's a lot. That's loaded. So my name is Taryn. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I currently reside in DC. I do a number of things, both professionally for myself and in the workforce. Full-time, I work in government acquisitions. That's where I learned how to negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts and learned a lot about how the government thinks when it in terms of spending money. And then in my own personal endeavor, I operate as a money mindset coach for rookie and second-year athletes.
Mm-hmm. So how do you get started with both of those, right? On the government acquisition side as well as the money mindset side?
Government acquisitions just happen. Me and my friends, we used to make a joke, like, you didn't grow up saying, hey, I wanted to work in government acquisitions. Like people would say, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a police officer. Yes, so it literally just happens. I can say this. I used to work for the Washington Mystics, and that was my first full-time introduction to the sports industry. And I got laid off, and I thought, oh man, I was almost there. I was so close to having this career in sports, and being laid off was like, yo, this is BS. But I started to realize, okay, so what is it that I really wanted? And at the time, I really wanted to do brand ambassadorship, which we now know is influencer marketing. And I said, well, what skills do I need? I need to be able to read contracts. I need to be able to negotiate contracts, but I don't want to go to law school. So the easy alternative just happened to be becoming a contract specialist working in government acquisition. I mean, since then, my whole career path has changed, but that's how I fell into government acquisitions. In terms of money mindset coaching, that has evolved in a number of different ways. I've always been keen on athletics. I started working in athletics in middle school. Don't know why, don't know how, but it created the knowledge and probably the passion that I have today in terms of watching athletes ascend from a very early age, but also watching them be preyed upon from boosters and that sort of arena from a very young age. Now we have NIL, which kind of levels the playing field. So there's not much risk involved in terms of eligibility being jeopardized, et cetera, as it was back then. But now it's like, all right, we still have this one major problem to correct. And that is people retaining, like you say, define your legacy, people retaining the earnings of their legacy post their planned career.
Yeah, and that's important too, because, I think when contracts like that are discussed, people always see the number that they're offered or that they're making. But obviously the other side of the equation when it comes to money is how you spend it, right, and what you do with it. So have you noticed an early trend among your clients in that space? Like, maybe it's action-based, whether it's, their thought or mindset towards money, and then there's a shift. But have you noticed any type of trend on that front?
We can say ideal clients, early trends. So honestly, it really does come from your childhood and your upbringing. And I look at things, the simplest way to put it is, were you deprived when you were coming up, or were you silver spoon? Because those two things, like, obviously there's a number of different ways you can fall in between those two categories or identifiers, but they take two different paths, and sometimes they reach the same outcome. So for example, if I was deprived growing up, now I have a multi-million-dollar contract. I can look at that as one of two ways. One way is everything that I was deprived of, I'm gonna go get it. Anything that I want, anything that somebody that I love wants, they'll never hear the word no. I'm just going to do it because I have the means to do it. And then the other side of that deprivation is, yeah, I know what it's like to not have and want to do everything in my power to never reach that point again.
Hmm. Do you feel that, unfortunately, that's something that weighs a lot of athletes and clients down?
Unfortunately, yes. Some people are stronger than others. I think what most people overlook is that these are young men and women who, depending upon their athletic abilities, have been catered to for most of their lives, or for, once their athletic ability was realized, like now you got a bunch of yes people around you. So you don't really know how to reciprocate a no because people have told you yes for so long, but it's only on one side.
Hmm. Yeah, and I feel like too that transition is so immediate, right? It's like if someone is coming out of high school or college, and obviously now with the NIL, it's changed a little bit, but usually it's like for the average person, right? Their wealth is accumulated like over time,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you're 18, 19 years old and you're very talented coming out of high school or college, whatever, it's an immediate contract that you get. So do you think
Mm-hmm.
that plays a factor too? The fact that it's the type of money that really changes your life instantly?
Absolutely. And then you also have to add in, let's sprinkle in how much financial knowledge or understanding did I have? Like, is this my first real introduction to money? And if it is, that's another layer of complexity where if you're not doing the inner work leading up to it, because I feel like at a certain point, you're going to get drafted, or at least you'll be signed. It's not oh, I hope I make it. Like,
Yeah.
at a certain point, but how much work were you doing up until, or once you realize that, how much work did you start to do mentally to prepare for the amount of money that you will receive? So,
Mhm. And so, um, again, generally speaking here, right? What would you say, I guess, are a couple of or three rules of money to live by, right? So whether that's you're an athlete getting ready to be drafted, or whether you're in high school, whether you're an adult that just has a regular or normal 9 to 5 job, what do you feel can be three basic rules that any and everyone could apply to, I guess, their everyday life?
I'm gonna do four
Oh,
because
even better.
there's an asterisk. So
Okay.
I operate from the three M's of money: make it, manage it, and maintain it. The asterisk becomes multiply it.
Mm.
So there's so many ways to make money. I think definitely throughout the pandemic, people learned that there are a multitude of ways, people who lost their earnings because their place of work was literally closed. Um, so I really don't want to hear the excuse of I don't have any money, because there's no way you should not be able to figure out at least one way for you to make money. And now the next step is managing. How do you manage it? You have to figure out what works for you. Are you a cash person? Are you a card person? What are your triggers? What makes you lose control of the amount of money that you are bringing into your bank account or to your household? And then what are we doing to maintain it?
Mm.
That looks a lot different for a lot of people depending upon how much money they're actually making. But that maintain and that multiply are the two key factors to, I could say, sustaining life or having a enjoyable life.
Mm. And there's an asterisk one.
The asterisk is the multiply.
Yep.
I coupled those two together, the
Gotcha.
maintain and multiply.
Okay, so the first one is make it. I want to break them down. So the four are there, right?
Yep.
So I want to start and break them down one by one. So the first one was make it, right?
Yep.
So let me ask you this, because I feel strongly that a lot of people nowadays are telling folks what to do with their money, right? Because that's good. It's important. We talk about financial literacy, whether for retirement, insurance, taxes, real estate, cool. But I think the conversation of making it doesn't happen as often as we might think it truly should. So how important is it to make money? how important is it to literally establish income? And I'm glad you had that first, because you can't really do anything with money that you don't have, right? So why is it, or how important is it to make money?
It's life or death.
Hmm.
It is literally life or death. You can't, I want to say you can't even walk outside and get on a bus. Now, some places you do have free transportation, but I don't know where you're going. You might be going from here to here, someplace that you actually could have walked. But yeah, you need money to do everything.
Hmm. These are facts. And, there's this saying of money isn't everything, right? So I'm going to ask a money mindset coach on this. What's your thought on that statement? Money isn't everything.
It's the mindset that goes along with it. When people try to paint it as a negative for people that have money, or that people aspire to have money, that programming is one thing that keeps people with limited resources. Oh, money isn't everything. Oh, there's more to life than money. Well, in the grand scheme of things, some people will say yes. I'm going to say no, because it literally is the center of everything you want to do. I mean, unless you can say Biden going to remove all these student loans, then you can say you can go to school for free. But
yeah, no, you're very right on that. So, like, when I hear people say things like money isn't everything, I think we have to understand the world that we're living in, right? So with the way inflation is, rent is, gas, right, student loans still existing, it's like, as much as we want to sit here and say that there's other things that matter, right? Your family, relationship with God, and those things, family, I think are very, very true. But for most people, I think that thought process of money isn't everything is actually damaging your mindset. And that doesn't make you, like, you can be a person that's not money hungry, but still want it, right? At the end of the day, to your point, money can get you certain things that, a cool or a nice heart can't. So, but so that's the first part, right? Making it, right? And I definitely did want to address that, because again, not everyone is going to be a multi-million-dollar athlete. Not everyone is going to get drafted as a teenager, whatever the case may be. But I think also too, having that mindset of like, all right, what can I do to get money first? Right? We can figure the rest out after you get it. But how do we get? And to your point too, there's a lot of ways to get it. Right? So the second one I think you said was manage.
Manage. Yep.
Okay. So what's the process behind managing money?
That's where you really have to do some inner work and figure out what works best for you. Like, are you a budget person, or are you a money management person? And just a high point for people who don't understand the difference: budget is dollar for dollar, item for item. Rent is this, gas is this, groceries is this, cleaners is this, versus, all right, this amount of money I have for my living expenses, whatever that may be, this is how it fizzles out. This is the amount of money that I have to invest or pay off debt, and this sum of money is what I have left over. And what I do with my leftover is my business. So,
Yeah,
and then keeping in line with that is, are you a cash person? Is having everything in cash, which I think is unrealistic considering the digital age that we live in. Like, there's no more really going to the store to pay your bill. It's so I guess you can say with your extra money, are you going to manage it by cash, or you want to manage it by a card?
And the thing is too, right? Like, personal finance is personal, right? And so no two people are going to have the exact same financial situation, right? When you factor in children, mortgage, student loan, like we mentioned, debt, credit cards, income, whether you're married or not. So like, your situation is your situation. And so how important is it, right? Because obviously, I think when it comes to finances, you also have a foundation, right, of things that maybe everyone should tap into, right? Whether it's life insurance, getting your taxes right, so on and so forth. But how important is it do you feel that clients should identify their own personal situation, right? When we talk about budgeting, saving, investing, how important is the personal behind it?
I think it's critical because it is what allows it to be free flowing. If you're literally forcing yourself into a strategy that does not work for you, you are struggling, it's probably not the right strategy for you. Now, granted, don't try it once and be like, nah, that didn't work. But if you really are diligent mentally and really trying to get a handle on your finances and you're like, yo, this don't work for my lifestyle. So for me, mint did not work for my lifestyle. I'm type A, but it just didn't work for me. So I had to figure out my own way. So, but at a point in time, mint was, cream of the crop for everybody else. And I was like, nah, that's trash.
But though you mentioned that too, right? Like figure out your own way. What's required for you to figure out your own way when it comes to money?
I think you really need to figure out what feels good. What feels good to me right now is I got a spreadsheet. I look at it, once a quarter, and that's kind of it. I know I live my life off an American Express charge card. I know I don't spend what I can't afford to pay at the end of the month. I have my number. I know what my average monthly spend is. I can forecast what's going to take me over. So, really doing the deep work, but it took a lot to get here. I went from having a spreadsheet, having paper and pencil, having what else? I was doing and having an app. I had three things that I was using at one time to manage not a lot of money. But I had to go through that whole process. I was being very diligent about repaying debt, and I would never do it that way again. But that's the process that I use. Like, okay, here's the spreadsheet. All right, I didn't spend $50 on grocery this week. I spent $44.60. So let me capture that on pen and paper. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, why are you giving yourself so much work? Stop. Please stop.
Do you feel that like by being that thorough, I don't want to word it. Do you feel that being that thorough, you took a piece of enjoyment away from your life, if you will? And the only reason why I asked it that way is because even though, some people feel like you should budget and stick to it, I think the sad part about that is that you tend to be so like a robot. And I'm not saying you specifically, but it's like the whole point of saving and having money is to live, right? So do you feel that you turned into like okay, I can't do this because of it's going against my budget?
You see how big my cheeks are, right? They up there. I'm crying because that's exactly why I said I will never do it again. I equate it to what I now call the deprivation method. It's not sustainable. It's only for short term, and it really doesn't implant the behavior change that you need in order to manage your money for an extended period of time. It's just why would I'm glad that I did it because now I can share my experience. I have a story to tell on that matter. But no, I would never do that again. And yes, I deprived myself. And guess what? The moment that I was debt free, what did I want to do? Everything that I deprived myself. I wanted to go shopping. I wanted to travel. I wanted to do everything that I said, no, I can't do that because I'm going out to eat. I'm just finding ways to spend money because I couldn't spend it for so long.
You know what? That's a great point too, because like on the lowest of keys, being debt free is low key a trap. If you really think about, because to some people, right, it's like you work so hard to become debt free, and the minute you get it, to your point, what's the first thing that you want to do? Probably go out and get some more debt. So it's like it can be very interesting, but I think you're disciplined enough to become up with money. So how essential is that, right? Being able to be disciplined enough with money and not just receiving a paycheck and then go blowing it all on some, or not just writing a budget out and then just ignoring it when you're in the grocery store, right? So how important is discipline in the grand scheme of all this?
Oh, discipline is right up there. Nothing can be sustained without consistency and discipline. You need discipline to remain consistent. You need consistency to see results. So it's all intertwined. Um, and I think people really do need to give themselves a limited amount of grace because things do happen, you know, which is probably why I resorted to a charge card because yes, I might say I'm only going to spend $2,000 this month, but things happen and it might turn into five. But I know that I can pay the five if I spend the five, you know, and I have the discipline to make sure that it gets paid versus it's very easy on a credit card to be like, dang, I was only supposed to spend two, I spent five, but I'm gonna pay it off. I'm gonna pay it. Don't worry about it. And then the next month it's two, and you back to two, but you still forgot about that extra three. So yeah.
Yeah, so run that down and break that down a little bit for me too, whether it's someone's first credit card or just overall credit card habits. Because anytime someone is, or if you're early on in your career, I'll say your journey, and you get to opportunity to spend money that you don't technically have, can that be a danger?
Yes. Um, it's absolutely a danger. What I will say is, and it might be an unpopular opinion, but I think to experience those things early when you won't be looking at such large numbers is a good experience to have when we talk about growth, because you don't want to come into, let's just say you're a college graduate. I don't know what a college, I'm just going to say 40,000. I don't know, that feels unfair. 50,000. College graduate, you coming out 50, 75, you think that's the number. Hopefully by this point and what the financial literacy game has evolved to, you understand that that's not how much you actually will be bringing home. But realizing those things and making, two, five, $10,000, I don't want to say mistakes, but experiences. You experience it at that level, you learn something from it. So then now your income has grown to 150. You're not looking at a $50,000 experience. At that point, I'm gonna call it a mistake.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, though. So it's like depending on the age you get a credit card. Obviously credit history being a huge part of someone's overall credit score. But even still, right? Even though people may say, "Oh, you should get it as soon as possible." If you aren't ready for a credit card, then you might want to kind of think twice about it. But I mean, so you mentioned obviously using one, right? What are your thoughts before I tap into the third and fourth but what are your thoughts on credit card usage? Like, between when we talk about using credit versus using a debit card or using your own cash.
It depends on where you are in your life, um, how you are managing your money, what your experiences are. And I'm trying to be as diligent as possible as I say this because, I can say, yeah, I put everything on my credit card. And I do, but I'm 37 and I had to go through a lot to get to this place of comfortability. And I've been here for about 3 years now. But early on, before it, and I still have to make this point, it's a charge card, not a credit card. But early on with my credit card usage, I really, I really did have it for emergencies. For my very first credit card, I got right before I was graduating from college. So I went all throughout college, no credit card. And I said, well, I know at this point I really do. I'm an adult now. I'm a real adult. I'm out of college. So I need to start establishing credit. But I was like, okay, I'm going to buy my groceries. I'm going to buy my gas. I'm going to buy things literally that I was going to buy anyway and just pay that money on the credit card, start to establish credit. And next thing I know, I had an $8,000 credit limit. And I was like, ooh, I went from 5 to 8. Oh, and then you start to see you get rewarded for your good behavior. But on the other hand, it was good for me to have an emergency because I wasn't making that much money and emergencies did start to happen. I was like, well, I'm glad that I was diligent with the use of my credit card early on, or I wouldn't have had that, credit limit to even float me through my emergencies.
Right. And I mean, to your point too, I think it's all situational, but I think that the majority of people should probably have a credit card, even if, I'm saying you're not using it every single day, but just the idea of like the world again, the world we live in now is like, if you don't have to use your own money, it's something
Please
to
don't.
consider. Obviously not financial advice, y'all, but but you know what it is too. I'll say this is like, knowing the game is very important, right? So I know a lot of people are anti-credit cards, but I think some of that is because of what's been taught, right? Like, oh, you should never go in debt. It's not, to me, it's not about that when it comes to credit cards. It's more about understanding what you can do with them, right? Think about the pros and the advantages when it comes to using one, as opposed to saying like, oh, I would never go in debt. Well, there may be benefits to using one. Just throwing it out there, of course, y'all. But do your research. Don't look, like, and you mentioned it too, right? Like, if you use a card, just be responsible with it, right? But then another, and then you mentioned was multiply, right?
Maintain, multiply.
Maintain,
we can
maintain.
We can wrap them into one.
Okay, maintain and multiply. Got you.
Yeah, they feed right into each other. Yeah. So the maintain and multiply, definitely your discipline and consistency will help you maintain and multiply. But on the multiply end, again, you have to figure out what works for you. Your multiplication could be, I am a full-time employee. I contribute the maximum amount to my 401k, and that's how I'm multiplying my money. I think one thing, like you said earlier, people are giving a lot of financial advice, and it could be overwhelming, and people could think like, okay, I'm not multiplying my money because I'm not personally investing in the stock market. I'm not trading. I'm not, buying crypto. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. Your multiplication could be as simple as maxing out your 401k contribution. You're still multiplying your money. You're still putting your money in. You're still utilizing pretty much the same vehicle in terms of stocks and investments. Don't put so much pressure on yourself, because now the cool thing is, buying stocks
on your own as individual.
On your own.
I would add that.
On your own. Yes.
Especially too, because you mentioned too, someone early on was like a recent college graduate just getting started, or whatever the case may be. That employer match, right? When you mentioned 401k, is like, it's pretty much a guarantee, right? Or it is guaranteed on a return of your money. But even still, right, maintaining it and multiplying it, having the understanding, like, you should also feel the need to protect your money, right? Like, and it's interesting too, though, that you use both of them together. Do you feel like those are very similar, maintaining your money and multiplying it?
I put them together. They are different, but I put them together in terms of synergy, because you talked about inflation earlier, about the rise in prices. Like, yes, you need a savings. That's your safety net, so that you're not, running up debt, or that you can't afford to pay back in a short amount of time. So, because you can't, what's the saying? You can't outsave inflation.
Yeah.
So you do need that multiply in order to maintain in this age, definitely in this age of inflation. Yeah. So that's why I kind of put like that little streamline.
Right. Yeah. And inflation is a silent killer. When I hear people say things like, they're afraid to invest. Well, honestly, not investing is probably a little bit more scarier when you consider what's going to happen if you don't put your money to work. But so do you feel like everyone should have an emergency fund? And I do mean everyone. But do you feel like everyone should have an emergency fund?
Everyone. I have a new number, but yes, everyone. I know some people who are like, oh, having, this is a great point. This is a great time to utilize this example. Oh, having money sitting in a bank is just a waste of money. Well, we're officially in a bear market, entering a recession. Oh, you had this money in an asset. Oh, you needed to sell off an asset to then take a capital gain, potentially take. And I won't even go into that right now.
No, you can.
Additionally,
I was just getting ready to say, like, as of this recording, y'all, bear market as of this recording. But yes.
But to potentially trigger a costly tax, because you didn't have a little bit of money just sitting in the bank.
Mm. You mean like if someone is selling for a loss?
I'm just saying in general. Like,
Okay.
so.
Oh, okay. I know what you
So
mean.
if your money was in the stock market
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're like, hey, I don't have a savings account, all my money's in the stock market. Now the market is going down, like you said, at this time of the recording. Okay. Now the money that you had in the stock market is not the same. You need to access money because you didn't have anything sitting in a savings account. So now the money that you could have accessed is significantly less.
Yeah.
Potentially, because we don't know what your asset class is, right? Potentially less.
Of course, because all investments are risky, right? Or I would say all investments require some sort of risk, right? So I don't think you should ever be 110% invested into any asset class, right? Bad things can happen at any given moment. So you just got to be prepared for the worst. But I agree, right? Everyone should have an emergency fund, right? Whatever your number is, whether you think it's 3 months, 6 months, a year worth of expenses, but everyone should have an emergency fund, especially before you invest into the stock market or anything.
Well, I won't say.
You don't agree?
I don't side on the before.
Okay, that's perfect. You don't have to agree on it. That's perfect. Why do you say that?
I am of the notion of, I do believe if you are diligent in your goals and your efforts, you can do more than one thing at the same time. You can save and you can also invest at the same time. I won't say save, invest, and pay off debt at the same time because I do it, but I'm old. I'm an old lady.
What?
I'm an old lady.
All right, so fine. So of those three things, save, invest, pay off debt, you mind putting them in order and level of importance? And I know it's all situational, right? That's a very, numbers can be a huge factor into all that, right? Depending on how much, you're trying to save, what your overall expenses are, what your debt is. But generally speaking, right, how do you feel about saving, investing, and paying off debt if you had to rank them?
I'm gonna get in so much trouble. God.
I low-key want to throw
I'm
income in there too.
I'm gonna tell you what's an 8 to me. What is an 8 to me is I've reached my emergency savings goal. So that's just what it was. And I'm glad that I did because it allowed me to do some things this year that I probably would not have been able to do. So save, invest, pay off debt. My financial advisor hates that I think like that. I mean, he literally hates it. And our quarterly check-ins, he's like, I don't even want to talk about your debt because I just don't want to be bothered with you and the way that you think. So that is what's innate to me. However, certain situations, such as inflation, like now I can't really afford to think like that in this time period because the interest on the debt is just not worth it. However,
there's a lot of howevers.
However, when you sprinkle in by the dip, I'd be like, oh. So no, I made significant. It's so funny. I made significant strides on paying off debt. I would have been done completely, but see what had happened was.
There we go. There we go.
What had happened was, I'm a very transparent person. If you haven't figured that out by now, what had happened was I bought a house, and that wasn't even the emergency fund. That was just a stockpile of savings after the emergency fund. Bought the house, but then a house has to be furnished. Dang, that was a very expensive bill. I was prepared for it mildly. Oh, well, okay. I was prepared for the amount that it was going to cost to furnish the house. I was not prepared for the amount that it was going to cost me to pay the designers to then design and furnish the house. So.
But again, like I said at the beginning of the question, it's all personal, it's all situational. But why do you think your financial advisor would say or be against that philosophy?
Because he knows I have the money sitting there. He's just like, just take the money, pay off the debt, and keep it moving. And
Eh,
for me, and this is where it derives from. I would rather take gains from something, not saying an investment, but I would rather pay off that my debt with returns versus this is the money I worked hard for, I saved it, and now I'm just gonna pay debt.
hmm.
That's always been my thought process.
Yeah, so I agree with that, right? But I think a huge part in that whole pay off debt as soon as you can thing, what gets lost in that shuffle and conversation is like whether or not you have guaranteed income that you control, right? Because you mentioned something early on. I appreciate your transparency and being honest, is that you've been laid off at one point, right? So let's
Yep.
say, right, this was years ago, right? This is and for some people, this is a real life situation that's happening now, right? Considering COVID and all that stuff. Let's say you're working a job, right, 9 to 5 job, and your mentality is, all right, I want to get rid of this debt immediately, whatever. I'm gonna blow some of my savings just so I can get rid of it. You pay off that debt, right, and then the next day, that same week or whatever, you get laid off, right? But because you don't have any like immediate form of income, now you're like, okay, you might be debt free, but you don't have anything to really fall back on. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have anything to really increase your income. That's why I think, when it comes to paying off debt, I think what really should be considered is whether or not you have the intuition and the ability to make money first. And that's why, to your point, you mentioned the first M was make money. I think there's so much energy that gets tossed on paying off debt, being debt free. You shouldn't owe another man or woman, but like I think the immediate focus should be on how can we increase income. That way, the idea of debt is all right. I really can pay it off when I want, but we just
Yeah,
live in a world now where being laid off is unfortunately becoming more and more common. Um,
unfortunately.
and I thought about making like some sort of post of that, like um, what's the first three things you should do when you get kind of laid off? Because again, look, people don't talk about that part of their life on social media, right? Like no
Nope.
one fails on social media. Like no one's going to show you their bad days, right? So this is why I always tell people like you shouldn't compare yourself to anyone because no one's going to show you the day they got fired, right? No one's going to show you when they maxed out their credit card when they didn't have that much money. No one's going to show you just the rough part. So you just got to focus on yourself. But if you don't mind too, can you go back a little bit and
Okay.
talk to me too about you being laid off, if you're comfortable enough sharing that experience?
Oh yeah. So I work for the Washington Mystics. This was the 10th season of the WNBA. And obviously at that point, the WNBA was not what it is today. And revenue streams was down. I was the front office desk, front, what do you call it? Receptionist.
Hmm.
Uh, so when you start to think about where do we stop the bleeding, where can we save some money to survive this season, that's definitely low hanging fruit. Oh, the girl who only works, mind you, I wasn't even full time. That's why I had to put in air quotes
Yeah.
earlier. I was working just enough hours. I think I was like full time is 40 hours. I think my schedule was like 35 hours.
Hmm.
So at that point, you're already saving on healthcare.
Yeah.
And there's no retirement account for me. There's so many things that you're already saving on.
Mm-hmm.
So I just became the first to go. It was so heartbreaking. Like I said, I was like, oh, I was so close. And I felt like, and I still to this day feel like, because I interviewed for a job with the Wizards and my top boss didn't know that I was interested or interviewing. I do I do believe this still to this day, that my time period of being let go got pushed up.
Hmm.
I was always going to be let go. I was the first to go. I was not the last to go throughout the season. But I do believe because I interviewed for that job, my timeline got pushed up.
Scale of 1 to 10, did you love that job? 10 being love, 1 being all right.
Did I love it? No. Was I excited about the experience? Yes.
You learn what lesson did you learn from that?
I learned a very valuable lesson that I never wanted to be a W-2 employee of a professional team ever again. You can hire me 1099. I can do some contracting work. I learned a lot more in that arena, but I was like, yeah, I never want to do this. Y'all don't pay anything to begin with. That's still to this day. It's a very low paying industry, because you're paid by your status that you work for this team or you're in this proximity to this industry. So it sucks, but that was the biggest lesson I learned. You don't got to worry about me trying to apply for another team.
So did you have a money mindset, if you will, back then? Is it safe to say? Or again, you let me know if this is inaccurate. But is that part of what fueled you or made you look at money differently? Whether that been the pay or being laid off?
Um, yes. I learned about money growing up from my grandfather and my father. So I always had smart money principles. I won't say smart money management, but smart money principles were instilled in me from a very, very, very early age. But that experience um, led to another experience where I was like, okay, I'm not even making my age in salary. And then that became my first that became my first indicator, like, okay, I want to make at least twice my age in salary, but in order to make twice, I got to at least make my age in earnings. So
No. Don't skip past that. No, for real, because
because
I've never even heard that before. But that's I guess, great mentality to have. You want to earn at least twice your age.
yeah,
Okay.
and that was, mind you, that was a long time ago. That was 2000. That was 2009
Hmm.
or 2008. One of those years.
But even still, so did you know that you weren't making that much? And that's an honest question because you
Yeah,
know
I knew.
you did. Okay.
Yeah, I knew.
All right.
But I was
But-
like, okay, I knew for a fact that I didn't want to do inside sales.
Hmm.
And that's normally where people get their start in sports. Like,
Hmm.
up until recently, when you created the sports management programs, charging people a bunch of money to get their master's degree, and now they got an end to be, an entry level sports.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress on that. However, for me, the trade off was, okay, I get real live, day to day experience for a professional team. That was it for me. So the trade off was worth it. And the trade off in the end was still worth it because I learned the very valuable lesson of they really do not pay.
Let me ask some. Do you think it's possible to be paid through experience?
Without saying it depends, yes.
Do you think people should get paid through experience? Do you think that should be and I guess I'm looking at it from both sides, right? Like if you're, and majority of the people that probably deal with this are like newer, I guess college graduates or younger people. But do you think, would you tell someone, hell, would you tell you the 13 years ago to accept experience, right? Would you tell the younger you to say, you know what, be willing to accept a pay cut to reach, hopefully, your long-term goals?
Absolutely.
You
If you
would.
can afford to do it. And I think
Okay.
that's where a lot of people get derailed. Um, Affordability. They create a lifestyle that they need a certain amount of money, or their ideal lifestyle requires a certain amount of money. It's not their passion, it's not what they want, but the lifestyle that they want, they can have.
Mm.
Me, my passion has always taken a front seat. I will say I was um I don't know the right word to put the emphasis on it, but I was devastated. So my sports passion and ambition was crushed to the point where I was like, man, forget that. I'm gonna go get this money. I'm still getting an experience that will lead me back to, at that point, back to the avenue in sports in which I want to be. But I'm gonna be compensated, like you said, the experience. I'm gonna be compensated for getting this experience, even though it doesn't directly relate, because what you say, I took one for the team. I did the experience with the low pay, and look how it turned out.
Yeah. And yeah.
However, to this day,
However, so
no. This is a good however. This is a good however. To this day, I still have friends from that team in relationships.
mm, mm. That's a very great point, right? Because folks may say that college is a scam, right? When you consider the cost of it and all that, but you can't put a price on the friendships and the networking and the relationships that you build through college, right? So all the people that you talk to on a day-to-day basis, you got to remember that they are your age and somewhat like-minded like you, right? And so those are the relationships that you can have forever and ever, right? And to your point, about where you used to work, like those relationships, right, can be pretty valuable, and you can't always put a price tag on that. But I 1000% hear you. It just made me think of college on my end. But I don't know. For me, I would say, like, if you had to choose between money or passion, I probably would go with money first. The sad reality is passion doesn't pay the bills, and we're getting older, so we just have to look at things a little bit differently. So I would probably say money first. Now that doesn't mean, like, you don't chase your passion, or like you don't chase your dreams. But again, we're not, we're not 12. We're not in middle school. We don't, but I say it like I think like money can be a very uncomfortable conversation at any level, right? Whether you're talking with your friends, your parents, people you went to school with, your employer, whatever. It can be very uncomfortable, but I also think it gets tossed to the side when it comes to the level of importance and priority. Like, we don't have to sugarcoat anything. Money is what pays, bills, right? Like,
1000%.
yeah. And I mean, I think you mentioned you got money principles was the word that you used from your grandfather early on.
Yep.
So how would you suggest that, like, one's I guess break free from indifferent spending habits, if you will? Obviously, again, just like, look, all of money is situational, but how would you suggest or advise someone to break free from their spending habits?
One, they have to acknowledge what they are, what triggers them. I know what triggers me. I really do appreciate a beautiful sneaker.
There we go.
But I also have discipline to the point where I'm not paying, $5, $6, $7, $800 for a pair of sneakers. I just refuse. There's one pair that I really truly want, and I was going to buy them as a reward for closing on my house.
There you go.
But a certain pivotal person in the industry passed away. The markup on all of their items went ballistic, and I was like, that was the one I should bought that when it was $800. That was the one time. But for me, I know sneakers are my thing, which is why I don't own any pair of Off-Whites, because, it's very rare you catch them when they come out, and, the aftermarket value is just insane.
Yeah, but I mean, everyone, I think, what's it called? Guilty pleasure, something like that. When it comes to, like, spending money, everyone has that one thing.
Everyone has that one thing.
Sneakers is yours.
Yeah, sneakers is mine. Definitely recognize what your triggers are, how they develop. There's always a sensory to where your things develop. Mine's developed in high school. I used to work in this shoe store and I got a discount. So wearing kid size shoes, getting a 30% off discount, it was very easy. You worked at the store, so when the Jordans came out, you can easily buy yours because you worked there. It it made sense to me. But once I knew that I didn't get a discount anymore, I was like, oh no, no, no.
Gotta relax.
Gotta nip this habit in the bud. Gotta nip this in the bud.
I'm laughing at probably the reality or the moment where you realize like, oh, hey, hang on. I'm not, you mean to tell
in
me
college
yeah.
with work study checks, I'm gonna go buy some sneakers. Nah, I just started buying sneakers again because my money's just a little different.
It's a little level up. I respect the flex. But so that's another thing too, right? When you think about college students and age and wisdom, but also time, right? So I think everyone, you can sit and say that, no one has regrets, but if you could change a couple of things in your life, and this applies to anyone, I'm sure there'd be at least one thing, right? So how important or is it to be around people that are doing great things, right? How important do you think that is for your clients, for college students, for anyone that's really trying to get or improve with their money? Do you think that's a factor at all? There we go. That's the question.
Is it a factor?
When you notice and you spend time with your clients, do you ever feel like who their circle is an indicator of how they may spend their money at all?
That's for anybody.
Yeah.
Athlete, non-athlete,
yeah,
high level exec, it doesn't matter. You just naturally gravitate and share information, that knowledge share. So let's just say I know someone who's on the board of XYZ and they are amongst a different, it is what it is. You're amongst a different class of people. But my association to that one person that I know that's on that board can level me up so much, so greatly because of the knowledge share that they have in that boardroom versus me. If I don't have an association to someone like that, I can't even share that information with those who are around me. Like it's almost like a little circle here, a little loop here. It's an infinity loop, but it's at different levels. So if you want to grow and expand, you need to be around people who, one, think like you, but then you also need to be around people who outthink you. And then you can't be stingy with the information that you filter through that is worthy and not pass it on to somebody else.
Do you think some humility is required in that? Right? Like, because again, if we're talking about anyone, right? Well, I know you mentioned athletes, but high level execs, a boss, a parent, or whatever, do you have to be humble enough to say, you know what, I may be doing okay, but in order for me to level up, I have to surround myself with those that may be doing a little bit better than me. Do you think some humility is required?
Absolutely. Especially for people who have egos. Like if you don't have an ego, no, you don't. Humility isn't required because you're just naturally a humble person.
Yeah.
If the ego is thick, nah, they can't tell me nothing. Hey, why I need to go? Like, ooh. Like a key factor. I just had this conversation with my friend at a party a couple of weeks ago. I was like, yo, he's a graduate of Hampton. I was like, you've never been to homecoming? He's like, nah, not since I graduated. I was like, are you kidding me? And he was like, nah. I was like, why not? He said, nobody ever seems to want to go. I was like, that's your problem. I was like, you're looking for people who don't have the same interests or needs that you have. You're going to have to be the domino. I was like, you are a full-time real estate investor now. You need to be at homecoming and not at the parties or in the yard. I was like, you need to go to the gala. If there's a golf tournament, whatever those level of events are, that's where you need to be. Take your butt there this year and let me know what relationships you form and build.
Wow, that's powerful. Be the domino. Wow. That's, I don't usually have a pen and paper when I record, but that's I'm gonna note that when I watch this over again. Be the domino. So basically, being a domino is like, okay, if you want to do something and you ask people to your left and your right and they say no, or people aren't around to do it, sometimes you have to be the one that starts it.
Yep.
There we go. Noted.
As people start asking, oh, how did you do this? Oh, where did that? Like, remember I asked you to come to homecoming with me and you said, nah. Well, while I was there, I met alumni Blow and Blow, Joe and Sammy Sam. I don't know where I got those names from.
Say, all right, hey, maybe at those homecomings, those are the names. But hey, but the message is there. The message.
And they plugged me, and that's how this happened.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So sometimes, and that's the thing too about a lot of people's new journey, is that sometimes they have to start it on their own.
Yes.
Right. And that can be a struggle, but at the same time, it's required, but you gotta do. So the psychology of money.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, a part of the title is money mindset. So the psychology of money. Right. So what impact do you think psychology has on money? And are those two things kind of intertwined and related as much as we may think?
Oh, yeah, they are. You can't have one without the other. Your thoughts about money, scientifically proven, come from childhood. You develop certain ideals until you replace them with your life experience, if you choose to do so. But it all stems from your childhood.
Yeah. And do you think someone's psychology of money can change over time? Right? Because it's not a secret. And I don't even ignore this. But I would say the average, I'm not going to pull out numbers, but for the average, let's say young Black person, if money isn't talked about at the household, right, it can be a struggle to, change that as you get older. But now with YouTube, podcasts, social media, we're seeing that evolve and change. But do you think it's really possible for someone who may not have been taught about money to really change that as they kind of progress through life?
Absolutely. They just have to take ownership. They can't wing it. They can't, pull information from here and here and not actually explore it and kind of put it to the test. But if you be diligent enough and take ownership and kind of really pay attention, that's the only way you're going to change your psychology. But the other thing is you have to have the desire to change.
What does that mean?
Some people, so for example, when I used to work with young professionals in the same arena, not going too deep on the psychology side, one of my prerequisites was you had to have a goal, and buying a house could not be a goal. And people were like, well, why can't buying a house be a goal? Because your goal needs to be something that's going to create a habit. People who are making financial changes to buy something one time, you only make improvements up until that thing is accomplished. You don't really look for a lasting change. So that's why you have to have that desire.
Gotcha. Yeah. Another noted. But yeah, so the desire to change your situation, it is important, right? Because as much as other people may want you to change or want you to make more money, start a business or whatever, I think above anything, you have to want it for yourself, and like the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of anything, it really does start with you.
Yeah.
But so one of the things I want to ask you too was, would it be safe to say that working for the Mystics prior towards your experience there, was that your dream job at the time? Would you say, like, at the age of when you got, would you say that was your dream job? Like, do you remember like getting the call that says, oh, we're hiring you, or we're offering you a position? But like, it was a pretty important role, would you say?
Was it my dream job?
At the time, at the time.
Even at the time, no.
No.
Because what I really wanted to do was work in the marketing department. I got my undergrad in marketing. So sports market, I was torn between fashion marketing, entertainment marketing, and sports marketing. But sports marketing was very, very personal to me. And on the topic of experience, I didn't get to intern in sports. I got to intern in fashion. My best friend interned in entertainment, which is where I knocked that out completely just from his experience. And so taking the entry point into the sports arena for low pay, in my mind, I just recently graduated college, so it's not much difference than taking a paid internship.
Gotcha, gotcha. And sometimes sacrifice is required. I know everyone has these, demands like, all right, I want this, I want that. There's moments, not all the time, but there's moments where sacrifice is okay.
Yeah.
But so one, I appreciate, you telling, your story, of course, and we take it from the top, from the government acquisition side, to obviously, being a money mindset coach and helping athletes and just overall pushing this narrative of financial literacy and ways that we can break free from bad or poor spending habits. At the same time, establishing money rules, right? For everyone, regardless of, if you're an athlete, high level exec, you're just getting started with your journey. The idea of sacrificing, whether it be pay or whatever, the idea of experience really can be a teacher, right? And when you kind of wrap up all of that, right? You think about everything that you've gone through and everything that means, and now, right, you're continuing to help other people, kind of change the trajectory of their life and their family's life. In addition, right? Because anytime you talk to one person about money and they start to make better decisions, naturally they start to think differently, and it hopefully can impact their family and their people around you. So I'm sure your clients and the people that you work with, their family probably appreciates it as well, right? So wrapping all of that into one, the reason why I say all of that is because it leads me to the final question that I have for you, and it's a question that I ask everyone that's been on Define Your Legacy, and that question for you is, how do you want to be remembered?
Is this like truly legacy, like dead and gone?
It can be whatever. I'm going to keep
Or
that
lasting impression in the room?
right. No, I want to keep that question as open ended as possible. It can be related to money, life, life after you're gone. It could be today. You know what I'm saying? If you, I don't know, whatever the case may be. But how do you want to be remembered among your family, your friends, social media, people in the financial literacy space? I'm going to leave that question open to interpretation.
I want to be remembered by being a selfless giver, never being afraid to share my opinion, even if it's unpopular, and having real life conversations that make a change, make an impact for other people. And when I say selfless giver, I'm not just talking about, financially, being a humanitarian or philanthropist. I mean, like, literally, there are a lot of selfish people out here. Like, they have a wealth of knowledge and they will never share it. They will never, like, it fathoms me. Like, why would you not tell somebody that? So I wanted to add some context to Selfless Giver.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Helping people will always be a benefit, because I think whenever we talk about uplifting the Black community, I think we have to understand what's really required in order for that to happen is we have to help one another. But yeah, so if you could, right, could you drop your social medias or your email, LinkedIn, whatever? Where can people find you if they would like to receive more information, whatever you would like in terms of contact info?
Oh, I get to plug myself.
Run it
Ooh,
up,
ooh,
run it
ooh.
up. Go crazy. Let people know where they can find you. Go ahead.
I'm most responsive on Instagram at It's Taryn's World, TARYNS World, like the globe. On LinkedIn, first name Taryn, last name Bushrod. And then you can always hit me on my website, TarynsWorld.com.
And you mind spelling your first name for people? I mean, I'll have it in the link and
It's okay.
title stuff.
TARYN.
Gotcha.
Last name Bushrod, BUSHROD, as in David.
Gotcha. Well, we appreciate you again, Taryn, for being on the show. On the Define Your Legacy front, y'all, make sure you follow Define Your Legacy on Instagram as well as Facebook, DYL Podcast on Twitter. Subscribe to Theus Elijah on YouTube. All right. Theus Elijah on TikTok. And last but not least, all episodes of Define Your Legacy drop every Thursday at 8:24 a.m. Eastern. All right. All episodes of Define Your Legacy drop at 8:24 a.m. Eastern. All right. Now, before we let you go, Taryn, are there any final words you want to leave our lovely audience of Define Your Legacy with?
Yes. Do the work to understand your relationship with money. It will take you so far in life. It will help you sustain when things change, when you have a significant life event. Knowing truly who you are at the core will definitely take you a long way.
Yeah. And, so all this, I think, it's always personal, right? Like one thing I've learned about posting on social media stuff, like one, you never know who's paying attention to your content. And two, people will always be at different stages, right? There are billions, literally billions of people on this earth. So when we understand that like your situation is not the same as pretty much anyone from a financial perspective, we always preach this, but get 1% better every day, right? That's what really matters. But yeah, thank you again for being on the show. It was definitely a good one. A lot of gems were dropped. It was interesting to hear your story. And just like that, y'all, on Defining Legacy, we gone. Peace.